Welcome everybody to the Unrealized Purpose podcast. My name is Isaac, co-host here with Dalton Howell. Dalton,
Hello
say hello.
there.
The purpose of the podcast is essentially to get people to ask questions, realize certain possibilities, potential in life, and kind of just address a lot of the things that we're all thinking, but maybe just don't know how to articulate or even believe in. And I think the best way to start the podcast off the right way is to talk about some, thoughts that we're having throughout the week, because being an original thinker, or at least thinking outside of what everyone else is telling you is true, is necessary for growth in life. Rather than accepting everything as law, it is good to ask other questions and try to find a different perspective. So one of the thoughts of the week was, one of the fastest ways to change your life is to quit taking things at face value. Asking why and trying to find a new perspective can change your life. It's just something that, as social media, there's so much opinion in the news that it's often hard to find some truth in there, because there's a lot of opinions floating around. So, do you have any thoughts on this tweet?
Yeah, I mean, as we grow up, like all of us kind of get accustomed to let's listen to mom and dad, and mom and dad are doing the best for us. They're telling us like, hey, do it because I said so. And we learned that for like 18 years, till we move out, or maybe some move out a little sooner. And then you step out in the real world and it's like, well, because I said so. And it's like, well, maybe there's a little more to that. So we kind of have to hop out of that mindset of just taking, the statement and going, oh, I guess this is what's true and how the world runs. It's like, well, it doesn't have to run that way. You can step out of that box. All the box is what someone else has created. So you kind of have the choice whether to stay in that box of their creation, or you can step out of the box into somebody else's or into your own. So yeah, that's kind of my thought about it.
Yeah, it's cool how you say fitting into other people's boxes, or other people's opinion of life and how the world works. I think that's really interesting you said it that way, because as you grow up, everyone else's opinion, everyone else's habits, their lifestyle, you watch, and then you form your own opinions, and you essentially build your own little box of ideas that, well, this is the only way things work. And like as you said, once you turn 18, you got to or even at a younger age, it's important to ask questions and say, why is this getting put into my little box of thoughts?
Yeah,
it's so important. I think another tweet that we sent out this week was went along the lines of, people will come and go, that's part of life. The ones that are meant to be in your life will stay. Don't get upset because someone left. They're not headed where you're headed. And I think this is actually really interesting, because it could be reversed, and people that come into your life, you have to see the value and potential of that relationship. So kind of how everything worked out with Dalton, the guy that I used to do a podcast with, it just didn't work out. It wasn't a good fit. He was going in a different direction, and then Dalton came along, and it just kind of worked out. And all of our conversations were like, well, let's talk about this more. Yeah, and why not record this stuff? This is really interesting. Even if no one listens to it, at least we'll be able to listen to it later.
somebody will listen to it.
Somebody will. Yeah.
Make my wife listen to it or something. Like, hey, listen to this.
Check this out. And then probably my last one for the week was, forgive the younger you. And this tweet actually performed really well on Instagram. Like, I think 10,000 likes or something crazy. And then it did really well on Twitter as well. So the tweet says, forgive the younger you, believe in the current you, and build the future you. And I think that's super important for us all to just remember. You got to forgive yourself for the mistakes you made and just keep going and build in the direction you want to go. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Absolutely. Build the future you. Yeah. So forgive the younger you. We're all going to make mistakes. It's inevitable. I actually just talked about this the other night. Forgiveness. Forgiveness has two parts. It has the forgiving, the letting it be a bygone. And it has a second part, though, that so many people don't think about. That is making it right. That's the way I put it, is making it right. It's like between two people, when something like that comes along, you have an offender and you have the person that has to give the forgiveness. And normally the forgiveness, I would say, actually comes a lot easier most of the time. Obviously in bigger, more drastic ways, it's more, it takes time and thought. The offender also has a responsibility, and maybe it's something you did your own self. So you are the offender and the forgiver, both in one. And so when you're the offender, you have the responsibility to make it right if you can. And I think that a lot of time that's where we miss forgiveness is, yeah, there's the letting it be a bygone, but then the person that's responsible for causing the sin per se, they have a responsibility to make it right. And just like in what you're saying is, to even get to the second one and the third one, that first one has to come, because you have to be able to acknowledge your own mistakes that have hurt yourself, and grow from that. So when you do that, you start to have belief in yourself. If you don't accomplish that first one, I don't know how you can get to the second one. Because to have belief in yourself, you've got to be able to depend on yourself, and which is going to get to our other topic, responsibility. But then when you believe in yourself, then you're able to decide, okay, this is what I want to build for the future, so that when I get, this age and I have a family and a wife and kids, I can take care of them. These are the goals that I have to get to provide the life that I want to provide for them.
We often expect people to just forgive us for messing up, not intentionally, but maybe saying something or harming them. We expect them to forgive us, or we want people to forgive each other. Like we expect people to forgive each other, and then we often forget that we need to forgive ourselves. I could definitely see that as a huge thing that we just don't think of. And I think it was something that Jordan Peterson said, actually. It was, if you're still thinking about it, something that you messed up on 3 months ago, and it still bothers you, you got to deal with that. Yeah. You can't just let it stay. You got to deal with that, especially if it's, recent, but still on your mind.
Yeah, you've got to deal with it. It's the same thing with, I look and say, what relationships with other people have I done something and I had to have forgiveness, but then not only thinking about, okay, now my part is to make it right. What relationships have I not made it right? Kind of a good thing to go back and consider, because maybe, you're some of the greatest people that could influence you in your life, they're not there because you didn't make it right. You miss out.
Okay, so if you want to kick us off on this week's topic of responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah, responsibility. One of the things I first do when I start talking on a topic is I figure out the words that we're using, specific words, and I give them a definition. And that's very important, definitions, because if you don't give it a definition, a lot of times people have different definitions of words. And if you don't give it a definition, a solid ground and foundation, a lot of times you talk past people and they don't hear what you're saying. My definition here for responsible, I use the Webster's 1828 a lot. I don't know if you have a favorite dictionary. I do. Do you have a favorite dictionary?
I don't. I use Google and whatever one comes up.
Okay, gotcha. My favorite is Webster's. I don't know why. Maybe I just grew up with it, and that's what I love. But the word responsibility in the Webster's dictionary is liable to account, accountable, answerable, as for a trust reposed or for a debt. We are all responsible for the talents entrusted to us by our Creator. That is a really, really good definition, I think. And one is because it encompasses responsibility as to be accountable. It says if you're responsible, you're going to be answerable. You have to give answers. If you're responsible, you have been trusted over some certain things. It uses responsible in the sense that it's something that you actually owe, like a debt. And then the last thing is the phrase it uses, and this is probably why I like the Webster's, is we're all responsible for the talents entrusted to us by our Creator. We all have a
Really?
Creator. And so regardless whether you're a responsible person or not, you have responsibilities. So whether you fulfill them or not is completely up to you. But a faithful person is the person who fulfills a given responsibility and who rightfully carries out an obligation or duty. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have a definition that you like for responsibility?
I don't exactly have a definition, but I like the one that the Webster's came up with. I think what I was looking through was the Oxford definition. So I think I should have gone a little bit deeper with the definition itself. But I like how it portrays that and the fact that everyone has responsibilities. And even if they may seem very, very small, at least you start with something,
Yeah.
and as you get older, you get more, of course.
Yeah, you had in your notes, I was looking through some of your notes. You had, I think it was 10 reasons from Jordan Peterson, I think, just 10 different reasons responsibility matters. I don't really have mine in like a specific list, but there's definitely some things here that I'll just kind of go through. One of the things is if we want to be successful, we have to be able to be accountable on time. Show that you really care about what you're doing. It's all under the word responsible. And not only it's not really like whether, well, if I go through life and I don't have responsibility, or whether I do have responsibility, it doesn't really matter. It's like, no, it's necessary. It's necessary to have responsibilities. And it really doesn't matter how you go through life, you're going to have them whether you like it or not. If we really want to be successful though, we'll take pride in it and we'll really show an effort and care of what our responsibilities are and that we carry them out to the fullest. When we don't meet up to the level we need to take a step back and realize, what did I do wrong here? Where was I irresponsible? It's also, and I kind of put this kind of just tossed in there. It can be tossed in anywhere really, but I find it very disrespectful to those around us that are counting on us to perform when we don't.
Exactly.
Be responsibility. There's always mistakes. Like there's mistakes, but just absolute. I would say it's absolute not caring to accomplish what you said you were going to do, then you don't do it. Also factors in the reason why it didn't get done, depends on whether I would look at it as, well, that was very disrespectful. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I kind of want to pull it back to you said that, success, responsibility is a key factor in success. And I can vouch for that 100%, because back when I first started out working for myself, essentially, if you don't have a level of responsibility when working for yourself, you won't be working for yourself very long. Yeah. If you don't show up when you're supposed to and be proactive and take on that responsibility, you can't make your life better or other people's lives better, because of the level of responsibility that I had to take on when working for myself, showing up every day, not having someone that was on my tail. Hey, you got to be here at this time, got to do this, got to do this. I was able to make my life better, but then I was also able to help other people because of all the little things that I've learned along the way in taking on a load essentially and moving it, and just I was able to help, family, friends, because like thinking about it this way also, if you do work for yourself, you get freedom to create your own schedule. So if family, friends need something, you can go and help them.
Yeah.
So indirectly, you free up your time to help other people by carrying a little bit of responsibility in terms of success and doing something on your own. You're going to have to take on a level of responsibility, but it is rewarding and it is enjoyable, because it is, yeah, I'd say it's fulfilling as well. Because when you accomplish something that you've built, it feels good and you feel a sense of, I'd say, importance as well.
Yeah. And I would even toss in there like, we're using this word successful. And, I didn't look up a definition of successful. There's a couple of them. I think there's one that's superior to the other, but I'm going to use the less superior definition. When we look at success, we say, okay, I've got money in the bank, I'm a healthy person, and I'm responsible, and I have a level of value. I would say is kind of what we look at success as. And I don't look at success in just through that lens. It's like you took a step out and jumped full in to, all right, self-employment. And that is like wildly, well, I say it's wildly. I mean, I did the same thing for a little while. But it's yeah, it's everything. You have to be responsible. But even if it didn't work out, and it didn't fold through, you still took responsibility. In the end, you'll still take responsibility for whether it works or whether it doesn't. Maybe it
Yep.
just didn't work. But I don't want us to get caught up on that word and thinking because, oh, well, things aren't working out, so I guess I'm not successful. It's like, no, success is the continuing of trying to make it work.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it.
Don't let that word make you think, the world gives us, I would say society gives us a look of what success is. This is what success is. It's like, no, that's not what success is.
Exactly.
It's not the, $300 pair of Nikes I've got on my feet and the Gucci belt. I'm just comparing. I don't know if you like Gucci or Nike, but I don't wear either one of them. I don't have enough money for that. I'm a poor man. No, I mean, if I wanted to go out and get a Gucci belt or a Nike, I could, but it's like I don't, because that's not what success looks like. I'm not trying to look successful. I'm trying to be successful. So yeah, and anyways, just kind of a thought on that.
Well, I think it's important for each person to obviously know what the word success means, but then define it for themselves and just really take some time to think about that, because success could look like consistently just making $5,000 a month and spending time with people that you enjoy spending time with family, friends, and developing a level of physical fitness. And that could be your definition of success, what makes you happy and fulfilled. And that's what you should pursue, is what would make you happy, essentially. And I guess I would define that as success rather than the monetary means, because like in my case, my goal wasn't to become a millionaire. My goal was to spend time with family and be able to have freedom. And I was able to reach that. So that was my small definition of success. Definitely don't tie it down to, well, I'm only successful if I have like 100,000 followers on social media. I've got $1 million in the bank. No, that doesn't sound fun.
You can have
Like,
all of that and be miserable. Like,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I think you said it. We have to define what success is so that we'll be happy. And I think like both you and me, Isaac, the reason like we click so well together is because we understand that we can be happy under some very poor conditions in the world. And so you can still find a place to be joyful and have happiness. But I feel like we hit that pretty good right there. We want to move on, or you got anything else you're thinking?
Just one quick quote that popped in my mind when we were talking about like your definition of success, and I think it really kind of wraps up the topic pretty well, is that something that Naval Ravikant said, and I hope I said his name right, but he said that when you're sick you have, or when you're like healthy, you have 10,000 needs, but when you're sick, you have one. And that's something to think about too when it comes to success. Like if your health is bad, but you've got $1 million in the bank, that's not very good. You know, you could drop dead tomorrow, but you're rich. Like, okay, well, that's not very successful, I'd say. So I think that's definitely a good way to end that topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows how important that is. Yeah, I like that. So to continue on, I'm reading through my notes here, just a little more emphasis on it. You know, if one or more person, if I or one other responsible given people don't show up, it can slow a whole process down to even stopping a process, especially depending on what level of responsibilities you carry. You know, if the leader of the group is not being responsible, it stops the whole group. The whole group has been cut. So it really shows us the importance of responsibility, how it can be the driving force or the absolute death of any goal. So many times it seems today that we say we're responsible, but then we don't meet up to what we're supposed to. We seem to have a hard time owning and actually taking responsibility for failure. There was a quote in a movie a while ago. It was a TV show. I forget what the TV show was called, but there was this one quote that really stuck out to me. And the guy's talking to his daughter, and he had made a big mistake, but you know, he figured out that he had to own up to it, and he was just going to have to tolerate the upset people around him that were not happy with his mistake. And he said this, he said, when you make a mistake, you don't just try to shove it off or sweep it under the rug like it's nothing. You own it. It's yours to own. The mistake is yours to bear. When we take responsibility for life and when things don't work out the way we planned, we can learn and take lessons from these situations. And that's why I say, you know, you want to own it. You don't want to sweep it under the rug. You don't want to get rid of it. You want to be able to go back and look at that and say, okay, you know, this is the mistake I made. Now, moving forward, I know to never do that again. Like that is definitely not how it will help. That will not help anything. So the more we take responsibility for our actions, the more we will grow and be successful. I kind of had just a list of things here. If we're constantly trying to put the blame on someone or something else, we lose our accountability and can end up in a cycle of defeat. We essentially become our own worst enemy because it's never our fault. We have to be willing to say, I messed this one up. We have to be willing to own it. And I just listed like some of the top things here that I've caught myself saying, and I hear other people say all the time. We have to be careful if we're going to head down this road of it's not my fault. Eventually, and I know it seems a bit of a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch at all. And I actually think if like we were sitting down with, you know, some of the people today, like Jordan Peterson or Ben Shapiro, some of those guys, like very intellectuals, I think they would agree with me that if we start down the road of it's not my fault, I think we eventually get to a certain narcissistic level. And I don't know if you've met very many narcissistic people. I would say I've met two like drastically narcissistic people in my life. Like obviously we all can have areas of that, but we ought to be careful because the opposite of responsibility, being irresponsible, is a lot more devastating than I think people realize. So here's a few things I caught myself saying, and then I'll hand it over to you. Just some things, some questions that we should ask ourselves is like, do you try to find someone or something to blame? Are you saying, well, it happens to everyone, no big deal. Well, it's part of life. It's like, well, yeah, that's true, but you know, why don't you take a step back and look at it a little bit closer? There was no way anyone could have predicted that. Number 5, and this is one that oh man, I cannot stand this one when I hear it. I think I've said it like once or twice in my life. That's it. Accidents happen. It wasn't anyone's fault. I absolutely hate that statement. I despise it. Because like going back through my life, I look at all the things, and I'm not even that old. I'm only 25 years old, but just going through, some mistakes that I made, some major, some minor. I look at that statements, some accidents, some things that I didn't intentionally do. A lot of people don't intentionally mess up. Some people do. That's
Right.
terrible. But someone was involved. It's like I was involved in all of those accidents. And metaphorically, I was behind the wheel. So I'm responsible. I'm accountable. It was my fault. And so it's as simple as that. Is just don't just say accidents happen. It wasn't anyone's fault. So all that being said, I'll hand it over to you. What's your thoughts on that? I know that was a load.
Yeah, I like how you put that. The opposite of taking responsibility for your life is narcissism to a degree, or tendencies like that. You can probably create your own form of narcissism, and yeah, that's just really good, because if nothing is ever your fault, then what is actually caused, what can, like, I don't know, just kind of thinking about this, like, if nothing's ever your fault, then how can you ever do anything? Like, if you never actually take the action, I don't know. I feel like it could go a lot of different directions with that thought, you know?
Yeah.
But I like how you put that, you have to take responsibility for your own actions. And I think that if you didn't have any responsibility, would your life matter? Like, really think about that. Like, if you had nothing to do, no one to have to show up for, no one that, nothing, like, so even something as simple as like mowing your grass, like, if you had no responsibility in the world, I feel like some people would think that's really fun. And I think even myself, like, yeah, that'd be fun for a little bit, because go do what you want, go play some video games for 10 hours straight, sleep in, never show up anywhere. But then after a while, you'd realize that it was a very boring, sad, meaningless life, something that we'd want to avoid. And I think taking even little bits of responsibility and just seeing how it feels, take that little bit of extra responsibility, be someone worth counting on, and then see where that takes you, see how you feel. After taking on that little bit of responsibility, you'll feel a lot better. I feel like you'll feel a lot better. And just thinking back in my life, all the responsibilities that I had, and showing up and then accomplishing that, and then being like, hey, I did that. That feels good. It's a different sort of happiness. And I'd say it's even the good dopamine, because it's not, obviously not the cheap dopamine that makes you feel crappy after you've just like done this thing where it's like, sitting down playing video games or whatever, it's like, it's cheap dopamine. It feels good for a little bit, and then after you're like, dang, I wasted all that time. But I'd say on the other side of that, the good dopamine would be, taking on a little bit of responsibility and accomplishing something, and then noticing how you feel. You'll feel really good about yourself and the fact that you did something outside of yourself. I think at the end of the day, a lot of things come back to doing something outside of yourself. And I feel like that gives life a lot of meaning.
Taking on something new, especially just a new responsibility. Like a lot of times we get comfortable with what we have, and we never, explore out to see, well, what else is out there. And we never take on any new responsibilities, and we kind of miss opportunities. We could even miss things that make our goal easier to reach, just because we don't take on more responsibilities. Yeah, I loved everything you said there. I think you pretty much nailed it on the head.
I think a good way to wrap the episode up is to just, ask people, whoever's listening, to think about the responsibilities that you have and to appreciate them more. And if you don't have a lot of responsibility, try taking on a little bit more and see where that leads you. See how you feel after that, and learn to appreciate it more.
If you take responsibility, you're going to be happier, you're going to be stronger physically and emotionally, mentally. Responsibility makes us feel accomplished, successful, and it gives us purpose. And so it impacts, every single person in every single way. It impacts those that most experience a lack of responsibility by other people. It also, impacts those that take responsibility and in a positive light. It impacts them and brings them joy. Like if we didn't have it, just kind of summarizing everything, we need it to give ourselves purpose. We need it to hold to account those who've been reckless. And then, like you were just saying, if we didn't have it, and we didn't have to be responsible, I put I put 2 notes. I didn't know if you read through all my notes. I'll leave those 2 words out. You can look it up later. But we don't have meaning to life, and we don't have accountability for any wrong in the sight of man or God, whether you're a Christian or not. I'm sure there's going to be some people that watch this that are Christians, some that aren't Christians. There's no meaning of life inside of man or God if we don't have responsibility. So I just had some questions that, if you're watching this and you're kind of wondering, well, am I really as responsible as I need to be? I just put it in 4 simple questions. Am I responsible? Kind of examine yourself. Am I actually a responsible person? If I am a responsible person, list what I'm responsible for. Make a list. Write down some of and don't, not a list like, well, I'm responsible for making my coffee. No, make a real list. What are the big things in life that you're responsible for? And then number 3, after you made the list, just make 5 things you're responsible for. Am I doing a good job at keeping these responsibilities that I have now? Before you go on to take more responsibilities, nail to the wall the ones that you have. Don't try to take on so much and just be reckless with it to where you're failing all the time here and there and everywhere. We can only carry a certain load. Everybody can't be responsible for everything. One person can't be. So, ease into it. Don't just go full on, I'm going to take all these responsibilities. If not, work on doing these to max out the value of the responsibilities that you have in your life. And I think Jordan Peterson said this as well, is carry the biggest load you can. But like I said, cautiously with that.
Right.
Don't overload yourself, max out the ones you had before.
Something I was thinking about this week and for the last couple of weeks is that along the lines of what you just said, don't take it all at once. And same thing with life changes that you have. If you want to make some big changes, you can't do it all at once. It's to make the biggest changes, you have to make the slowest changes almost.
Yeah.
You make too many changes in one day, it's not going to stick for more than a day or 2. But if you started to infuse little bits of responsibility, little bits of changes even into your life over a long haul, consistency plus time equals massive change. Take the little bits of responsibility, take the little bits of changes, put them in your life and see where that takes you.
I have a quote for us to end with and just a little thought. I'm a Christian, so the Bible teaches that right's always right, wrong's always wrong, regardless who the parties involved might be. Think about that, while you're doing your responsibilities. The Creator put that in the heart and conscience, expecting each of us to take personal responsibility and accountability for our actions. So think on that, regardless who the parties involved might be. Right's right, wrong's wrong. I had a quote by Ronald Reagan. Try not to get off topic. Obviously, he was the president of the United States, so his quote is referring to, political matters. But he says here, we must reject the idea that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreakers. It's time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his actions, responsible for his actions. It's as simple as that. We're the lawbreaker in our own lives, and we're the ones that we have to decide whether we're going to keep our responsibilities, our laws. We all have a turning point where we realize the importance of something. I can share that, and then we can be done, or we can be done. I'll share it. So there was a time I would say I was just trying to max out what I could do. I was working a job. I was serving in the church. I was taking care of the property at home. The lawn was mowed. Room was impeccable. Everything I was doing, I was trying to do it to the max. And felt really good, really responsible. And I didn't quite get a section of responsibility. We came home one day from work, super tired, exhausted, all day in the hot heat. Hopped in the car, started driving, fell asleep. I ran off the road. I think I told you that. Hit a mailbox, went into the other lane, crossed the lanes, hit a mailbox, went right into a ditch. I think I was like 16 or 17. Still had my permits license, my permit. So I was pretty young. Woke up in the ditch and I was like, whoa. At that moment, I heard that statement again, accidents happen, it's not a big deal, accidents. And I was like, no, this was my fault. It's like, I was trying to push myself so hard, and I should have been responsible and said, hey, I can't drive. I'm too tired. Here, you take it. Know when to relieve that, because I was pushing myself too hard. Like, I look at this and I know, like, some people, like, maybe I'm taking it too hard on myself, but like, if it had been 10 seconds further in the future that I fell asleep, we would have ran off a bridge. Like, that in my mind goes like, wow, like, Dalton, pay attention to what you're being responsible for. If I had ran off that bridge, it probably would have killed 3 people, myself and 2 others. So you have to, I think, just same thing going back to don't overload. Overload is dangerous, but at the same time, carry the biggest load that you can.
That you can. That's the key. That you can.
That you can. Don't try to push yourself past that. And so for me, that was the turning point right there, was just seeing it was like, okay, I've reached my, I've got to pull back a little bit. I'm exhausted. And so that was kind of the turning point for me, just to see, that and all the other things that came with it. Just, getting home to dad and like explaining that to dad was like, that was awful. I hated that. It was like, I took full responsibility for it though. Like, my mom and dad raised me to take responsibility for it. Paid for the window, fixed the guy's mailbox that I took out, completely demolished. The mailbox had it coming, by the way.
I bet it did.
And what was so weird is, like, that day, I don't even know why I said this to the dude. The guy came out, he was so ticked off about his mailbox. I was like, my chest it's just like, dude, we just got in a car wreck. Like, and you're mad about a mailbox? Like, it was like, I was like frustrated with the guy. And I was like, dude, your mailbox will be up with numbers on it by the end of the day. Like, I just kind of wanted to put it back in his face. And then, like, I realized the commitment that I just made. It was like 6 p.m. in the afternoon or 5 p.m. And I'm like, Oh crap, I have
Um,
7 hours to get this guy a mailbox in the ground. But I did it. Like I did it.
You gotta
I was like,
dig
I
a
told him that
2-foot
I was
hole,
gonna-
pour some concrete.
yeah, like I literally went over there. I found a log, stuck the log in the ground. It was a nicer mailbox than what he had before. So he definitely upgraded. Okay. Larger mailbox, more beautiful log in the ground. But you know, made it better.
Okay.
But you know, just I guess that was my turning point at a young age of like, okay, this is, you know, you've got to be willing to accept your failures and your mistakes and take responsibility and owning them and letting them be a life lesson to you in the future. And so that's it. I'm done talking. I'll shut up now. And I think that's pretty much a wrap unless you get anything else.
Nope, we'll call that an episode. So
All
thanks
right.
everyone for listening in. We appreciate you, and feel free to send us a DM on Instagram with any topics or thoughts that you have, and we will be much appreciated for upcoming episodes. So thanks for listening in.